Welcome to Entrepreneurial Insights. I'm very excited about our interview today with David Wedaman. But before we get started, I just want to remind you that if you enjoy this podcast, go ahead and subscribe and sign up so that you don't ever miss one of these wonderful podcasts. But welcome, David. We're glad to have you today. And who am I sitting with?
Jay Healy, the co-host on the podcast. Thank you, Pearson.
Very good. Sorry. Sometimes I just tend to kind of take over. So sorry about that. But David Wedaman, retired, very important part of his title, former chairman of ReTrans, a logistics company here in Memphis. We're so excited to have you here today. Why don't you tell us, before we get started, a little bit about the company you had?
Right. Well, first of all, I always like to tell people, instead of retired, which sounds old, I'm unemployed.
Much better description.
So everybody today, we started a logistics company. Even back in the day when I first got in this business, it was transportation. You probably would know it now. It's a supply chain management. After COVID and everything that went on, and it's on the front page of the newspapers, everybody's talking about supply chain. So we started a supply chain business back in 2002. I'm fortunate and blessed that this is my second company to start. I had another company called Mark 7 Transportation that we sold in 1989, started ReTrans in 2002. ReTrans, everybody always asks me where I got the name from. Well, the company is named after my daughter. My daughter's Maria, but I always call her Ree. I'm the only person in the world that calls her Ree, and thus ReTrans, which I always thought was kind of cool. You could trans, and all that other stuff that came with it. So it kind of worked out well for somebody that doesn't know much about marketing. But so we started in 2002, and we were a non-asset-based logistics company, which means we didn't own any of the trucks, trains, planes that we put the freight on. We were an intermediary, much like people would think about if you went to your financial advisor. They're a broker of some sort that they buy and sell things for you. Well, we did that for businesses. For instance, at one point in time, we managed all of Lindt Ghirardelli Chocolate's freight, all 100% of it. So back in the day when I had a job, I was always after everybody eating more chocolate, which I did the best I could at that. So we did that. We grew it over a period of time to where it had 55 offices around the country. We were doing about $600 million in revenue and having a lot of fun. We had a great group of people. Many of them were from the Mark 7 family, and it's just great. But we headquartered here in Memphis. Love being Memphis. I am a Memphian by not forever. I've never lived any place else in my entire life besides Memphis or Shelby County, and grew up out in Whitehaven, and I've always come home, traveled all over God's green earth, have several millions of miles on different airlines, and but always come home.
And you grew up in Memphis.
Grew up.
Went to University of Memphis.
Went to University of Memphis. Couldn't even figure out how to get out of town for college. Went to graduate of University of Memphis. I have crazily an accounting degree. I tell people all the time, though, that frontal lobotomy and drug treatment has helped significantly to get me out of that. But no, I would not trade my accounting degree, and particularly if you're starting companies, having that accounting degree, because as I always tell people, no matter what job you're in, eventually, you're going to be at the mercy of the bean counters. And so if you're one of them, it kind of helps you through that process.
What was your first job out of college?
First job out of college, I went to work for Arthur Andersen, which was at the time the world's largest public accounting firm, and we had the Big Eight in those days. They were one of the Big Eight. I tell people now I still have my shredder, and the reason why I say that is Arthur Andersen's not around anymore. They went down with Enron. It's kind of a crazy story, but it was a great. I was there for 2 years. It was a great learning experience. I'll tell people a lot of the times I consider that to be about 6 years pushed into 2. They worked us to death also, but it really did pay off.
Well, so you worked for them, and then what made you decide to start a business?
Well, first of all, I didn't ever decide to start a business. Everybody talks about being an entrepreneur, and now they have entrepreneur classes, and I'm still not sure I know how to spell entrepreneur. But I'm not. I never set out to start a business. It's not like, oh gosh, I'm a kid in high school or a kid in college. I want to start a business. No, what happened was I left Arthur Andersen after the 2 years and went to work for one of my clients who was in the transportation business. That's what a lot of public accounting people do, if you're particularly from the audit side. Right. And so I went to work for a client that had to be in the transportation business, and there we go. So stayed there until 1988, 89. So I graduated college in 80, put it in context, stayed there 2 years, went to work for this company, stayed there until about 88, 89. And then all of a sudden our company got sold and they wanted me to move to beautiful downtown Oakland, California.
Ooh,
and
tempting.
At that time, Ree was about 2 or 3, getting close to being 3. And there was just no way to make that work. This was before cell phones. Yes, I'm that old. Before cell phones, before all that. And, you would go from a 15-minute, 10-minute commute to an hour and a half commute, smaller house, et cetera, et cetera. So I couldn't take that job. Well, after turning them down twice and quickly figuring out I was on my path to become director of paperclips at that company, I had to do something. So fortunately, I knew a fellow that was leaving that company who had the money to fund the company, and we started a company called Mark 7 Transportation. That would have been in 1989. So I tell people all the time that I really became an entrepreneur out of desperation. Needed a job, needed to stay in Memphis, wanted to stay in Memphis. And so we started Mark 7, and off we went.
And you talk about the fact that you've sold that company, then you sold ReTrans. That's got to be kind of hard. I mean, you grow up a baby and then you let it go. So how did you make that decision both those times?
Well, different reasons. The first time was the gentleman who put more of the money in, that's the golden rule. His gold, we get to play by his rules. Mm-hmm. But we actually turned Mark 7 into a publicly held company. So we were publicly held, and we sold to another company. And when you're publicly held, if somebody shows up and wants to buy you, sorry, off you go. So we did that, and did that, like I said, in 1989. And so that was kind of that situation. But I was not financially or wanting to retire at that time. And so I had a 2.5-year non-compete. And the great thing about the 2.5-year non-compete, they did pay me. But the second thing was my daughter, Ree, was about 13. And so I got to play daddy cab a lot. And it was a perfect time. And we got to spend a lot of good quality time together and off with it. The non-compete expires 2002. We start ReTrans in the middle of 2002, and off we go again. So now we're getting to where it's 10 years, let's see, I'm getting my dates right. So about 15, 16, years 15, 16, starting in 2002. We were a great company, mature, great group of people. But I was getting to the point to where I was thinking to myself, well, how long do I want to continue to do this? And how do you do things? And so what are you going to do? I'm 65 now. So if you roll it back, when we sold it in about 5 years ago, you start thinking to yourself, okay, how long do I want to continue to do this? Right. So we started to do that. And this time we were privately held. We engaged a finance company, an intermediary from Stiefel, and they helped us run a process to see who wanted to buy us, and we ended up selling it to a company headquartered in Switzerland. And so it was a great run. I spent my last 4 years after selling it getting to travel around the world instead of just domestically to places like Dubai and Singapore and things like that, which was a lot of fun, tiresome. I think that's maybe what killed me in the end. Is the airplanes. I flew every week, went someplace every week, and that gets old.
So when you built ReTrans, was that a unique strategy and unique logistics?
It was unique in a couple of different ways. One of the ways there again is this non-asset-based theory. And there's several people out there like that now. But the non-asset-based scenario where what we used to tell people is because I don't own the asset, the truck or the train or the plane, I'm going to sit on the same side of the table as you, Mr. Shipper, and try to find the best solution. No offense to my asset-based brothers and sisters out there, but they're coming in, and if their truck's green, they're selling you a green truck.
Yeah.
I didn't care what color the truck was or if it went on a train. Then we try to develop the best solutions. We also try to develop the best systems. There's a lot of system stuff now in supply chain, whether it's analytics or things like that. The other thing that made us unique is that our sales force, which at the end we had about 180 salespeople around the country, they were 100% commission-based. They worked for us, but they were 100% commission-based, and that kept a lot of aggressiveness in the company, a lot of want to. So I woke up kind of every day just answering to somebody about what to do. And what we told our folks internally is that commission salesperson is your customer. Without them, we don't have any freight. And without them, you don't have a paycheck. So that's the kind of thing we did. So that kind of made us unique in that regard, that we very sales-oriented, crazy commission guys, and they were a lot of fun.
So you mentioned that you had good people.
Right.
Yeah.
And over 250 employees in total, right?
Right.
Did you have a strategy for hiring the right people at the right time? Is there anything you could share with other entrepreneurs?
Well, that developed over years. And in fact, we were just talking about the new generation working remotely and things like that. I guess that makes me a dinosaur because, I'm not sure how to always respond in that because I'm learn about people and see people.
Yeah.
So the first thing you do is you try to figure out, to me, when you're hiring, is what are you hiring for? And too many human resources departments, in my opinion, try to hire the way a person looks, acts. They all meet. I mean, when I told you I worked at Arthur Andersen, we all wore suits, we all wore ties. It all had to be. The world headquarters was in Chicago. I could pick all the Arthur Andersen guys out of the O'Hare Airport. Because they all looked the same.
Right.
And so what we tried to do is to figure out what we were hiring for. And because the commission guys, there's different people that do that, it makes a difference how they look. So one time I told people, I says, I feel like I'm just running one big kennel here. I said, we got all the dogs and the cats, and I'm the biggest dog of the bunch. So, but that's what we did. So we tried to hire people for the position, understanding what their wants and desires are, making sure it worked two ways to give them both things. You learn things like over the years. So our sales force was typically experienced people because you can't survive on a commission job hardly when you're fresh out of school. A lot of our support positions, of course, our computer stuff, were younger people. And one of the things that we learned we started hiring a lot of folks right out of school, right out of college. Great. Go-getter people, go-getter young people. We learned a lot from them, but there was one problem with that. This was their first job out of school. Well, in 2 to 3 years, they think, and they're probably right, that they need to move to a different place. And they don't recognize whether it's a good job or a bad job because they hadn't had the bad job yet.
Right.
Well, we've all had the bad job,
right?
So we decided that we want to be the second job where they can compare it to somebody else's job and do that. Because but we were lucky. A lot of us had all worked together. We were able to put together a certain environment that fit us, but the biggest thing is to accept all, but understanding that they're there for a purpose.
That's very good. So what would you say the culture of the company was like? I can imagine, knowing you, that it was probably pretty fun.
We had fun. We had great Christmas parties. A lot of eating.
I bet of that.
A lot of eating and drink going on there. But we did things that, like I said, in that unusual way. But yes, we laughed a lot. And people, sometimes miss the point. They think if you're laughing, you're not working. Well, maybe for that few seconds that you're not, So think about it this way. I was talking to my daughter, my daughter's a very accomplished mom and a very accomplished school counselor. She was telling me, she says something about, Dad, 6-year-olds on average laugh or smile 300 times a day. Adults laugh or smile 100 times a day. Well, wouldn't we all rather be a 6-year-old?
Heck yeah.
I mean, if you're doing your job and laugh and smile and enjoy what you're doing, because goodness, we spend more time there than we spend anywhere else. Well, we used to. Now I don't know where they spend their time. But in my world, still there. And I still believe. I mean, I know we were talking about earlier about jobs being remote. I came across some young people one time, and they were talking about that they were working remote and how great it was. And I asked them one question, and I don't think anybody has the answer yet. What are you going to do 5 years from now when you want to get promoted? And you haven't met anybody? I don't know. Somebody will figure it out. It was all about, and how do you learn? How do you get trained? And that's the deal. I told people all the time, I learned more in the break room than I did anyplace else.
Yeah, that is going to be a big switch in this with these kids because they don't have that.
They don't.
They don't have those mentors.
How do you get to the mentor? You took the
Yeah,
words out.
yeah.
How do you find your mentor? And even how do you find somebody that is not doing it right? Because I've always
How
said,
you learn from other people, one direction or the other.
well, I've always said you learn more
Right.
Yeah.
from your failure.
Yeah.
I mean, when we would go make a big presentation to a big company, and if we got the business, sometimes I was scared to ask why. Maybe we underpriced, maybe nobody else was bidding, I don't know. But I always wanted to know why we lost, to do a good autopsy, because you're going to learn from your mistakes. And that's the kind of thing that I worry for young people. How do you get that experience?
Well, that kind of brings me to the next topic because you are a mentor to so many people. And so why do you think that that's important? And just tell me a little bit about what you're doing with that.
Well, I think it's important for lots and lots of reasons. I mean, I'll miss a lot of them. And I'm not comfortable with the word mentor always because I'm just who I am and I'm out doing things. But I've been so blessed and so lucky to have the ability to A, be retired when I'm still healthy, and B, even doing it before. That's one of the great things about the Society of Entrepreneurs, is that we make sure that we bring people into the society that are giving back
Right.
to the organization. And that was why it was so cool to be hanging out with these guys, because they're giving back too. But by giving back, you just learn lots of things. You learn about people. You're kept humble, hopefully. You learn how to do things. And it's easy for me, because if you might not figure it out just in this short cast, I don't mind talking all the time. But it's up in my head. I mean, why not give it out? And I always tell people, if I've met and talked to them, I says, just remember, my opinion may be worth what you just paid for it, and it's usually nothing. So, but I get a lot of warmth back from it, a lot of things. You made a mention about managing and things along that line, and the people talk about family companies, and that sometimes I think that's overused. But one time somebody asked me about managing a startup company, and what do you do? I said, think about it this way: managing a startup company is like raising a child. I said, when they're little bitty, you can't let go of their hand. You're with them all the time. Well, that's starting up you've got to hold on to it every day. You got to answer every phone call. You got to do whatever you got to do. Then they get a little older and they go to school a little bit, or you give them a little rope. You try not to let them go too far because you get them out in traffic. And then as they get further and further along, they go to college, they go away to school, and that's the company. Then all of a sudden they're adults and they're running everything without you. You feel like, and that's what you hope.
That's success.
That's what you hope for.
Yeah, exactly.
You look around and say, "Well, I don't guess I'm needed anymore." But that's why I say being a good entrepreneur is being like a good parent. So you learn from being a parent that's hands-on, or not even a good parent, just surviving parenthood. Maybe is the way you do that.
That's a great perspective.
It sure is. Well, you talk a lot about being a parent and how important your grandchildren and your family are to you. What else are you doing with your days these days, now that you're unemployed?
Well, now that I'm unemployed, well, first of all, they get first cut. I have a 7-year-old granddaughter and a set of twin boys. They're 2.5, and they're a lot of fun, lots of energy, and they love to keep. I'm called Pop Pop, and that's my new name.
I love that.
I'm Pop Pop, and it's a wonderful job. So I get to spend a lot of time with them. I'm trying to do some more charity work. You'll have to excuse me. First of all, I really thought this was just a podcast with no video, so sadly you get me. But I was dressed. I've been down at I was with several other men this morning down at Catholic Charities, and we were feeding hopefully a couple of hundred homeless people on this rainy morning, and feeding them breakfast. So we cooked breakfast and help serve it to them. But that's fun. That keeps you honest and do this. I'm still on several boards. I guess like every unemployed guy, well, I do a little consulting work. You got to have a consulting thing just so that it acts like you're doing something. You can't say, what are you doing? I'm laying it around all day. I mean,
I don't see you laying around very much there. That's for sure.
So I do a little consulting work also.
That's great. Very good. You also talked about the fact that you were born and raised in Memphis, grew up in Whitehaven. Where did you go to school?
I actually went to Hillcrest in my freshman year, and then I'm a graduate of Memphis Prep, which is now long gone, and you have to be involved in the 70s and everything going on there. That schools got changed significantly, but yeah. So they went to University of Memphis, like I said earlier, our good old Memphis State in the day.
But I know Memphis is very important to you. What are you happy about? What do you think is good about Memphis right now?
Well, first of all, it's Memphis has been this way for as long as I've been around, and is that we're our own worst enemy. We're not going to point out to you what's good. We're going to always point out to you what's bad, what's sad, all the negative things going on. Yes, we have a crime issue. We have a crime issue in Memphis, but that's not the only thing we have in Memphis. We have companies coming here all the time. We have great things. Employment is fabulous here in Memphis. It is a very easy place to live compared to, I know you have a daughter that's just leaving Philadelphia. Compare Memphis to Philadelphia, Chicago. This is a very easy place to live where you can be 15 minutes from your family, and you can own a home, and you can do things because the cost of living is much more efficient, and you can make friends and things. And there's just so much good going on that we should be positive. We've talked about it at the Society a bunch. Companies being started all the time. So think about this. All these great folks that are Society of Entrepreneurs, and I can't even say it, much less spell it, but that if you go on the website over there and you see all these grand names, and these are people who've done extraordinarily well, most of them. They could live anywhere in the world they want to live, and they stay home. They stay home. We're here. And we just need to understand that we need to take care of education. I'm a lucky guy. I got my dad, like I said, repaired cotton gins. I'm come from a very blue-collar family. But I got to go to college, worked my way through, got a scholarship to help and make a difference. And education makes so much of the world. But I'm not one of those people that think you got to go to college. No. You go into the military to learn a trade. You go become an air conditioning guy or a heat guy, because, by the way, we're filming this on a Friday, and this next week it's going to be really cold. So I'd love to be a heating and air guy right now.
Exactly.
But do something that gives you a specialty, that makes you different. I was talking to a young man the other day who's getting ready to go through the interviewing process. I said, well, what makes you different? Why should I hire you? If I was looking at you. Come up with something. And Memphians are fun. We used to have at Memphis Catholic several years ago, we had a thing called Education That Works.
A great program.
And they worked their way. It was a private Catholic school, but they worked one day a week to pay for their tuition. And I got exposed to a lot of the young people there, and it was fabulous. And what we were trying to show was, one, some of these kids had never been in an office building. Well, I'm that kid. I never was in an office building until I was in college. I did not know anything like that. And so we taught them a lot of things. University of Memphis has a program that's called Fogelman Professional Development. Because I can remember this is how bad this was. I can remember in 1980, I was interviewing, and I'd never gone to these fancy restaurants and ordered off a menu, ever in my life.
Right.
So I'd gone all day, and we went to dinner, and there was a spoon at the top of the plate. Mm-hmm. I knew it was a trick. I didn't know what to do with the spoon. I broke out in a sweat. I'm not going to hire them because I don't know what to do with the spoon. But that's the truth.
So there's a program at the University of Memphis. That's so cool.
How to interview, how to dress. We look at your resume.
What to do with the spoon.
What to do with the spoon.
Very important, yeah.
And it is so great to see things like that. And so, it's those little things. It doesn't have to be global that you're doing something to help somebody. It's the little things. It's having lunch with somebody to do things with. So
that's awesome. That kind of all, I think I might know your answer anyway, but one of the questions we always ask in the podcast is, do you think that entrepreneurs are born or taught? Can you teach somebody to be an entrepreneur?
I think, yes, you can. Now, a lot of people will say, no, you can't. I think, yes, you can. Now, the one thing that the entrepreneur that has to have is be a risk taker. You have to be willing to take a chance. Now, but that chance can be forced upon you, like me, desperation.
Yeah, got to pay the bills.
But I think you learn the process. I mean, I was blessed to start one, and I never started the company before and had no clue what I was doing. My second one, I was better at it because I had learned. But yes, you learn. And so when you go through life and you have those good jobs and bad jobs, learn from both, and that's what you'll take away. So I think you do both, except for one thing. You have to be able to take a risk. That comes with, but that risk could be done with a gun held to your head. I don't know, but you have to take a risk eventually.
I think that's a very, very good point.
Great insights. Mm-hmm. Well, we appreciate the conversation.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's great to touch base with you.
It's great. Good. Thanks. Good. And I appreciate all that y'all are doing with these podcasts.
Well, we appreciate all that you're doing, especially getting up on a cold, rainy morning, feeding the homeless. So thank you very much. And also, don't forget that if you enjoyed this podcast, we have others. So make sure you sign up and subscribe wherever you get your other podcasts. Thank you.